So, one more time this year, everybody. Great to be with you. It is Warchant Game Day. I'm Jeff Cameron. There's Tom Lang, and you guys are watching, and we appreciate that on Warchant TV on YouTube. Make sure you like, subscribe, and all that good stuff. Away we go. Florida State set to take on Georgia here in just under an hour. Weird environment from my friends that are down there in attendance. Normally I am, Tom, but this year did not need to go. We've got it covered with this giant Warchant staff. And so I said, all right, I'll be happy to stay home and do the pregame show with my boy Tom Lang.
Well, I'm happy you're here doing this pregame show with me, but I am sad for your favorite taco place, which lost about 2% of their December revenue that they were projecting, assuming that you were going to be down there.
Yeah, the Los Tacos that I frequent and have had a good time at numerous times is probably bitterly disappointed.
Yep.
I can imagine the cooks and the waitresses throughout the evening the last couple of days looking towards the door. Where is he? I mean, he's normally an early arriver. So it hasn't happened. I'll have to double down when I go down to South Florida next time. And hey, by the way, in Tallahassee, they've got the new JetBlue flight down to South Florida for a nice cheap fare. I'll be having to do it as well. All right. So, Tom, let's gauge where are we all at. I'm asking you guys in the chat, and I'm asking you directly. And I'll give you my thoughts in just a second. Where's your head at, everybody? Obviously, frustration has been brimming for some time. We all know why. We all understand the task here today is not an easy one, given how many of Florida State starters they will be without. And you probably have a hard time diagramming a way or a path to victory, but maybe not all is lost, maybe not helpless. Maybe there are those that believe the team will come out inspired and play one hell of a game and maybe catch Georgia going through the motions. We'll see. Where's your head at today, Tom?
Yeah, there are plenty of teams that don't look enthused to be playing football this past week, and Georgia could be one of those. And, you know, if you want to argue it the other way, you could say that a bunch of these dudes playing offense for Florida State cannot wait to get on the field and show their wares. So it's possible. I think personally, I had a this morning, it was like a stage of grief popped up out of nowhere. I'm in denial. I'm feeling a little defiant today. Come on, guys. You know what? If you show up, you play, there's an early fumble, goes your way, short field, you score. Like, let's just say you punch Georgia in the mouth a little bit early. Are they really willing to go toe-to-toe for a period of time? Like, if you can start well, how much does Georgia really want to be there? It's kind of inverted, my feeling, because the defense has a lot of dudes that, you know, could take it or leave it in terms of veteran status. This is just another game in a long line for their career up front on the defensive front. But on offense, there's a lot of dudes who are trying to make names for themselves and create value for themselves. So there's a lot of incentive when we have the ball. It's just going to be about who plays offensive line for us.
One thing I will say, normally when we prep these games or the pregame shows that we do, Tom, I'll take a glance at all the advanced numbers. You do too, and then you try to piece together a game story. Today's pregame show is particularly tough to do, not only because there is a sort of a pall hanging over the program based on the snub and the frustrations we feel, and really kind of where college football is at right now. It's not just Florida State, but a lot of these bowl games have taken on an air of indifference, and it's hard to watch. It's very frustrating. But the other aspect is that typically when I'm looking at advanced numbers, I'm looking at things like EPA and success rate and, you know, those kinds of things. And really, I don't know that they're all that relevant here, because if you utilize those numbers, you can see areas where Florida State would have an opportunity. For example, Florida State is number one in total EPA against the pass in the country, Tom.
Right.
In the country.
Yep.
Now, that would be a stat you would want to use as a way of saying, can you make Georgia one-dimensional early? You've got the best pass defense in the country according to total EPA. You look at success rate, by the way, Florida State's number one in the country against the pass and success rate as well. So you'd say, well, they're going to take away an entire aspect of the game, and there's your path. You've got a one-dimensional team. You can begin to predict play calls. You can begin to stack the box and make plays along the line of scrimmage, shorten the game, keep the ball on the ground, maybe play smart field position. But it doesn't really work because you don't know who's going to play, how long they're going to play. Even the guys you think are slated to play, we don't know how many snaps they're going to play. So it makes it harder to kind of devise a path to victory using those numbers.
Well, yeah, and yesterday, I'm talking about how on a very low first segment of the Jeff Cameron Show in terms of morale for this game. How I'm not going to blame Mike Norvell however he wants to play it, because he knows the pulse of that locker room where they are physically, because a lot of guys are going to be playing banged up today, believe it or not, with all the opt-outs. There are a lot of people who've been mending wounds, specifically in the trenches, that are going to give it a go today. So if he plays it careful to protect his roster, I don't blame him. If he plays it fast and loose and it's carefree, I don't blame him, or anything in between. But the one thing that we've got to monitor today is that during the 13-game regular season, our rotations, especially on defense, were aggressive. I mean, backups were in the game in critical moments in the first half, the second quarter, fourth quarter, and you're saying, why is Tatum Bethune not out there? Or why is Kalen DeLoach not out there? Why is Jared Verse on the sidelines? This is a pretty big drive if you could turn a 3 and out. And no disrespect to Byron Turner, but I'd like to have Jared Verse out here in this situation to close out this drive. Okay, does he still do that today as thin as they are? And do they dip even farther into the 2 deep than that top line? Or does he give a lot of these players who have been backups 90% of the reps? I don't know. It's kind of in Mike Norvell's nature to do heavy rotation anyway. So they did it last year in the bowl game against Oklahoma. I know you were there in the stands, but especially on offense, they rotated those weapons the whole way, and it felt like there was a disjointed nature to Jordan Travis-led offense. We'll see what it looks like today on both sides of the ball in terms of who comes off the sidelines.
Yeah, and, again, you can look at, as I said before, certain numbers, and it's not always predictive of how a game's going to be played, but that's especially true today. That's especially true. Those numbers, you can kind of just toss out the window a little bit because, again, those were amassed over 13 games with your starters, many of whom will not be out there today. And so it makes it difficult. I will say this. Mike has always, if we're gauging on his history, has always played to win the game. Now, that may sound strange to some people. They may say, what do you mean? Well, I've talked about this before, but you'll see there are times when a coach recognizes that they're outgunned, they're outmatched for whatever reason. Could be injury, could be the program's not where it needs to be just yet, whatever it is. And when that happens, oftentimes a coach will want to call the game in a way that allows it to stay pretty close and you can save face to some extent, that it's not a 60-0 type game or something like that. And I'm not saying that would happen, but the point would be Mike has never kind of leaned in that way. He's never been bent in that way. He's always been, I don't really care about the score. I'm trying to win the game. I'm doing whatever I can to be productive. And I don't really care that the matchup currently doesn't favor me. We're going to play to win the game. And that may lead to a lopsided number. That may lead to some lengthening of quarters and extra plays and things that you don't want to see when you're outmatched. So if that history plays to form, then Mike's going to come out and play and call the game as if he thinks Florida State's going to go out there and win the game. And I like that he has that mentality. I've always appreciated that he's had that mentality. And frankly, I don't really know as a competitor that it's a thing that you should ever shy away from. I think you should always kind of feel like, well, I've got logic and reason over here telling me that I'm outgunned, but I also know that anything can happen in one game. And so in one game, let's go for it.
Yeah.
What the hell do we have to lose? Who cares?
Right. Yeah. There's an assumption that for some reason that Georgia is inherently more motivated to be here than Florida State. They should feel cheated themselves. If this is truly about the best 4 teams in the country playing for the national title, as multiple people on television and even the committee themselves kind of have been hinting that it's about the best 4, well, then they have every right to feel as pissed off as Florida State does that we're playing in this game against each other and it doesn't count for anything. But the other thing I'd say is there's a lot of disingenuousness among national media types, go figure. There's hardly ever any of that, where they say that, the idea that a bowl game is meaningless is stupid. Like, that's this thing that's floating around there. Everybody knows what we're talking about. You're 13-0. You're the first Power 5 team to ever be left out of the college football playoff field. This does not carry the same meaning as the Invitational does. But it doesn't mean, and nobody's arguing, that this game is totally meaningless. To Brock Glenn, this is incredibly important today. To Hakeem Williams, if he can get out there, this is a big-time game with a lot of meaning. For Destin Hill, who we've been waiting to see on the field, he's been on the 2 deep all season long. Now he's a starter. Is he healthy enough to play? Big deal for him. Keziah Holmes, you go down the line. And look, it doesn't equip us well to win the fight today, but for these players, the experiences that they're going to have today over the next 60 minutes that they can parlay into 2024 and beyond, there's a ton of meaning for those players. And that's why we're all here. That's why you're tuning in on Warchant TV. That's why we're all going to watch this thing together.
the most exciting aspect of today's game is to watch the kids that will be here next year, that are going to be competing for your Noles next year, who have real upside. And all I can do is cross my fingers here today that we see the best of Hakeem Williams, that we see the best of Destin Hill, that we see the best of Vendravius Jacobs, that we see the best of really any of the players that have been second or third string, whom you're going to count on next year to be first and second string guys. There are some players that have intrigued me all year long. When we go to practice, you and I'd get together and we'd sit there and kind of chart what was happening and talk about what players we like and which players we think have a long way to go and which just need to be given a chance. Or when this guy graduates, I bet this kid will play really well. He seems to be coming along nicely. Yeah, I mean, I thought about those guys all day today, really more than any other aspect of this game, because again, I'm on record of saying, I have been for weeks and weeks and weeks, that I thought Florida State was in real trouble in this game for a variety of reasons. That was even before many more opt-outs were known. And so at the end of the day, I did think about those kids that you and I talked about and said, hey, he can play. He's behind a guy right now, but he can play. Let's see what he does. He's going to get – there are a lot of kids like that would get a chance today against a really good Georgia team. Even if Georgia starters, if a lot of them, let's say, are out, we don't know. We'll know. We'll do the head count when the game starts. We'll see who's in, who's out. Bottom line is they've recruited exceptionally well, and they have year over year over year. So you know there's going to be high-caliber talent, size, speed, strength, all of it that they're going to be going against. So what an opportunity. I mean, maybe at the end of the day, no matter what happens in the final score, maybe we're all left saying, my God, I think we got us one in Brock Glenn. Maybe we're left saying, oh, my Lord, Georgia could not cover Hakeem Williams. Goodness gracious, did you see Keziah Holmes, whatever, 52-yard run? You know, something like that. Maybe that's the conversation that we're having after today. That said, I'm relieved that it's almost time to kick it off. I'm tired of all of the talk around the game. I'm ready for the game to be played. I'm ready for the game to be over, win or lose. I'm ready to move forward. Florida State's opportunity to complete the dream season was stolen from them, and nothing can get that back. And all we can do now is try to find a way to move on, and you really can't move on until this season is officially over, which happens today.
And I hope once this happens and the game is over, whatever the result, we can start to appreciate what we saw for 13 games out of the 23 season. You know, I mean, like what these guys are about to do today, win or lose, you cheer them on, and they've got the proper spirit and culture. Like that hasn't gone away in Mike Norvell's locker room. It's just, this is a tall task, and it's a big ask for these guys to be able to compete and win a football game against a Georgia team that's just more talented. They have more talent. Doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to win today. But, you know, again, let's appreciate what we saw on the way to 19 straight wins, 13 in a row, unconquered, Power 5, doing all those things, winning an ACC championship game against the top 20 offense, holding them to under 3 yards per play. Like all of those moments have gotten totally lost in the wash. And I remember the last time I did a Warchant Gameday show, it was the post-game show after the ACC championship game. And man, we were all so happy in that moment. You joined us from the press, or not the press box, excuse me, the suite level of Bank of America Stadium. Mm-hmm. I mean, we got to enjoy that and feel that way for maybe 6 hours, including sleep, before it flipped. And before you saw maybe the live odds on Alabama's chances to make the playoff field were changing and Florida State's were getting weaker. And you're saying, oh my God, does Vegas know something? And then what happened. I just hope after this day is over and we wrap it up and we do the post-game show on this channel that we can appreciate what we saw, because what those kids did to put them in a position to be 13-0 today was remarkable. And it's something that should be always smiled about, not frowned upon, you know?
Yeah, and I would hope you've already done it, to be honest with you. I mean, I know what you're saying. I think there are people out there who haven't, but I would hope that you've already had time. I mean, once it was yanked and taken from you, the opportunity to complete the dream and play for a national title or play in the college football playoff, once that happened, all you could do was look back with fondness and appreciation for the season that just was, because that was the official end to that season. I feel like this is just a kind of a clown show that we're dealing with right now, and it's upsetting. It's frustrating, and I know no fan wants to hear that. Everybody wants to believe before they go into an Orange Bowl game and a high-profile contest between two top 6 teams, this would be an incredible matchup if both teams were playing for something and at full strength and cared deeply. We all know what a great game this could have been, but we're also capable of being realist, and so, that's not the game that we're presented. That's not the game that we're pre-gaming right now. That's not the one that we're analyzing right now. It's not the contest that we would have wanted. It's unfortunate. But I for one, have taken the time to really, really look back on really, when you think about the ride, you go back to before the 10-3 campaign, and you really kind of size all this up. I will point this out. Ira wrote a good piece today on warchant.com. You can read it, where he kind of sizes up how we've arrived at this place where you have these opt-outs and you have the frustration centered around this game. And, each case is unique. And I agree with all of that. I've talked about that before. I think Florida State's in a position that no other program in America has ever been in this regards, as you just correctly noted. No undefeated Power 5 conference champion has ever been left out of the playoffs. So when I hear people say, hey, well, Alabama last year was ranked 5th. They didn't get in, and yet they played hard in their bowl game. Well, man, they weren't undefeated, first of all. They didn't win their conference. That's just the way it works. I mean, that's tough. I mean, this is a case where Florida State is unique. They were one of one. That's how bad they got screwed. They are a unique case, and what has followed has been a unique set of circumstances, and not for the good. But I don't believe that it represents where the program's going. Quite the opposite. I think Florida State's on a roll. You've got a great young head coach who's angry, who is organized, who is going to continue to preach the same sort of principles that got this program back to where we all want it to be. That doesn't waver. That doesn't change. We know that because he didn't waver or change his approach, his methodology, his work ethic, any of those things when they were losing games and losing games to the likes of Jacksonville State. That didn't shake him. So this won't either. He's not going to change because the way is the way. You have to do certain things. I mean, Nick Saban talks about this, and he's right. I mean, you think you can get away with not doing the work? It doesn't work that way. There are certain things you have to do to continue to strive to get better. He's going to continue to do those things. We'll never get back this opportunity. Got it. Understand it. Processed it. Angry about it. Still frustrated by it. But the program itself is going in a good direction. They're going to do huge things in the portal, Tom. I know they are. They're going to have success next year. Now, listen, will they sustain another 13-0 record? That's unlikely, especially because you're losing so much production. But are they going to fall off a cliff and be terrible? Oh, nay. They're going to be a very good football team again next year.
Yeah, I found it interesting. I read the column today on the site. Warchant.com has all the coverage. If you haven't joined us, it's going to be interesting here in the next few weeks with the portal on both sides of the market. Like, who's leaving after this game is over, who's coming in. But that Ira was willing to put it in a paragraph that says, is it an open question about where this program is going? There's no doubt that the momentum is negative in the month of December. How could you say anything less? But I thought about it in a different way, because to me that didn't even register in my mind that what is happening this month could short circuit all that Mike Norvell has done and the position that he's put himself and his players in to move forward. But it is setting the tone for an interesting few months when this game is done. I understand this is a pregame show about the 60 minutes against Georgia, but let's be real. We're going to be thinking ahead big picture, as this game is being played. You're watching Brock Glenn to think about and assess what can he be for you in 2024. You're watching Hakeem Williams to see against Georgia Tech, what can I expect out of number 8, Hakeem Williams? That's what we're going to be doing. And it does set the tone for a fascinating week ahead, because you've only got a few more days to declare if you're going into the portal for the spring window. And then also, who is Florida State bringing in for spring practice and beyond? Like, this roster is going to look completely different. If you think it looks different today, especially on that offensive side of the 2-deep, my goodness, in spring, it's going to be completely different. And then against Georgia Tech, you won't recognize it. It's a fascinating build ahead for this group, and it's mostly going to be out of the portal.
So you have the makeup of a roster and the continued change and the churning of players and who's coming and who's going and what's possible. And then in the meantime, look, again, we're going to shamelessly plug the site we work for, warchant.com. We're all efforting to give you the best coverage we possibly can. And I would strongly encourage anybody to sign up now who hasn't already. One of the reasons is not just because of what you're talking about with the roster turnover and what's possible and the comings and goings of players, but also because of what we have going on, which is a major lawsuit against the ACC. Right. And what you have now is a truly transitional stage that Florida State is going through, simultaneous to college football going through massive changes. Most of those things are not pleasant to fans, and they haven't had pleasant outcomes, meaning the changes to college football and the reasons for the aforementioned kind of pall over the bowl games and some of the things that we're watching. Unlimited transfers doesn't appeal to anybody. Nobody thinks that's a real good idea. Can't put your faith in any kind of a roster construction at that point. So you don't know what to believe in, but you do know there's a lot going on, and you certainly know that Florida State has put together back-to-back double-digit win seasons, an undefeated campaign. They are the reigning ACC champions. They will be all of next year when they play their ACC schedule, and they kick it off in Ireland against the Georgia Tech club, by the way, which came on really strong at the end of the year, got them a bowl win. That is not going to be a pushover game. There's a lot to figure out before we head over to Ireland and watch that football game in Aviva Stadium. There's a lot to figure out about just how good Florida State can be. I'm still up in the air on that. I think we're talking about a roster construction here that may see this team be anywhere from 7-5 to 12-0. I mean, it's a crazy variance that we're talking about that is still possible, but we got a lot of questions to have to be answered.
Yeah, in the form of about 6 players out of the portal, you could influence it by about a win a player. Your total, it's you're right. It's crazy what they're about to go through here to try and maximize what they are. I'd say right now they're probably around an 8-9 win football team, depending on how the ball bounces. But if you bring in your quarterback, if you get a defensive end, like a kid maybe out of Purdue and a couple other players like that, you are looking at double digits squarely and a berth into next year's invitational because you're going to win the conference. But there's a lot of work to be done to be a prohibitive or even a betting favorite, just a slight betting favorite to win the ACC next year. A lot of experience is being lost year over year. And on the bottom of the screen right now, for those of you watching here, we're not on radio, so everybody's watching on Warchant TV. Irish Rafael reporting that Braden Fisk's playing status is in doubt. That is the latest from the Tribal Council.
Fisk told him he was not going to be able to play today. We'll see for sure, quote unquote. Okay. Well, then, great. Yeah.
He was only on the marquee this week, teasing the game, and he's down. I mean, he's been involved heavily with the program since Black Sunday, if you want to call it that. I don't think this would be a scenario of, never mind, I'm opting out, and I could have played, but I'm not gonna. I think he was battling through something, and I think that's what we're waiting to see a final word on. But it was almost like a sweatsuit gate in the pregame. If you followed on our social account, Warchant on X.com, most defensive linemen were in numbered sweats and gear, and then Josh Farmer and Braden Fisk were not. So it was like, well, are they actually going to go through warmups? Then Josh Farmer put on the sweats that the rest of the defensive linemen had, but Braden hadn't. It's a mess. This reminds me of doing a pregame show during the COVID season. Remember when we were on the air at one point when the game was just outright canceled? We were doing a pregame show for said football game.
Well, I'm going to tell you now, with no Farmer and no Fisk, I predicted Georgia would win this game 34-10. I am now suggesting for those of you who drink, you should start now. This is, guys, this is not going to be much of a football game. So I hate it for Florida State. I hate it for the kids that are playing in the game, and I hate it for Mike Norvell and staff. This is, I thought it odd, if we're going to be honest about all of this. I thought it was very odd when Braden Fisk was going to play and was excited about playing. I mean, I thought it was kind of strange that he was going to. It doesn't make much sense for him to, but that's bad news. Where we have the Farmer situation, the Fisk situation now. Malcolm Ray already was out. Who are they going to play?
Daryl Jackson. He wants reps. He's going to get all of them if he wants them. Every single rep he wants. Dennis Briggs, I suppose. Daniel Lyons. I mean, that's what you're looking at right now. Yeah.
Well, yeah, the problem is that let's say you have Daryl Jackson play really well, and you have, let's say, Briggs plays really well. They just don't have anybody to spell him. And you're going to have – this is a Georgia team that can really run the football and will be committed to doing so. I think that'll be what Georgia does in this game. Buddy, I don't have words for this. I'll be honest with you. I've never, none of us have. I've never gone into a pregame show with you thinking, well, do we have enough players to play the game?
Mm-hmm. Like you do. Yeah, you do. But there's just what I would say, folks, is I don't usually promote another website, but go to Seminoles.com, print out the rosters if you got a printer. So that way, and sort them by number. Do what we do in spring when guys change numbers and you get new players on campus. Because as you're watching drive for drive, there's going to be times that you need to consult the numerical roster that is before you to know who is out there on the field.
Yeah, well, it's a tough thing here for those kids, again, not to get a lot of rest, and for the guys that are going to play to really have to play beyond what we would have ever expected them to have to do. Maybe it happens. Maybe it happens. Football's a weird game. Maybe you get out to an early lead. Maybe you hit a big play. Maybe you got a bunch of trick plays in your back pocket that you're going to roll out in this game. And the next thing you know, it's middle of the third quarter and Georgia feels game pressure or something like that. I don't know. I'm having a very hard time. Again, I was having a hard time before. I'm having a really hard time now. But Fisk and Farmer both come back out with pads on. Those aren't pads. They're in sweats.
No, yeah, that's not pads.
Those are not pads.
Without pads. Without.
Oh, without pads on, yeah. So, yeah, that's where we're at. This is it's unfortunate. You can see the Florida State fans there in the corner if you're watching this.
Who cares about the embargo now? It's not. I don't know anything specifically from practice, but I know that Fisk was in a boot the week after the ACC championship. I know everybody's in a boot, but like he wasn't going in practice. And there was a boot issue. So I think he was trying to give it a go because this would be another for him about to elevate to the NFL. His stock was only on the rise. If you could put together a good 60 minutes against Georgia and in another game like this against an SEC offensive line, dude, he could have made himself some serious money today. So I don't think Braden is trying to stay away for fear of something. I think that he was not 100%. And not, this is not an opt-out by choice. He's 100% he could have played. I just, in this specific case, I think Braden was trying to fight through something to play.
Melissa, you're right to describe this as surreal. I'm seldom without words, but this is surreal. I've never in covering football have I seen something like this. It's where we're at. We've talked a lot about the fact that the sport is transitioning at the same time that Florida State finds themselves in a unique circumstance that devastated the program and devastated these players. And this is the result. This is what you get. It's not a good look. I will admit it's not. I think Mike's got to be incredibly frustrated. But all you can do is go play the game. And I would do whatever I could to stay in bounds and run the clock. I would do whatever I could to shorten this game. It would be this. I will tell you, if by chance Florida State is somehow in this game late with an opportunity to win it, God bless this team. And I already love them. I already love them. But my God, really? I mean,
it's a big ask.
It's an ask.
There's like, hey man, can you come over to the house? I just need the dining room table to move about 6 feet. And then there's like, hey man, I forgot to hire movers. Can you help me move my 3,000 square foot home? Oh, okay. Who else is going to be there? No, just you and me. I figured I'll get you some pizza. We'll get some beers. We'll make a day of it. That's what the ask is today. That second part is the ask for this particular roster. What's left?
I'm trying to think of how Mike calls it. You talk about complimentary football, Tom, and coaches will talk about what they know is missing on one side of the ball or the other going into a game and how that affects the way they call the game. You're always looking to highlight your strengths and hide your weaknesses, or do something that helps cover them up. But when it's this apparent and you just are lacking bodies and you don't have. It's not just that you don't have your best players, which they don't. Now it looks like you're going to be incredibly thin at all these positions that the backups are starting at. And I don't know how you put together a competitive effort here. And I guess at the end of the day, this will be a game that we all just move on from, forget about. I don't know how it'll be described. It's got to be incredibly. I can't imagine being a play-by-play announcer for this game or a color analyst. How are you trying to assess this game? It's just garbage.
Nobody's going to – well, that's what Joe Tessitore's effort was in the ACC championship game. So I don't cry for him. He will be the
I'm not worried about his feelings or anything. I'm just talking about, how do you do it? It would be a very difficult task.
It would be. I know what you're saying, but I'm just in this particular circumstance, if he feels uncomfortable, well, fine, good. Because can you imagine being Mike or Kirby even? Like, what if Kirby gets out there and they chin check us and it ain't going well? And he's like, sorry, Mike. Like, do you wave across the field and say, sorry for what I'm about to do to you for the next 60 plays that I'm about to run? Like, it's.
Well, here's what I thought this anyhow. They had fewer, obviously, guys opting out, and they also had less upheaval after the snub, right? I mean, they weren't happy. Obviously, they were frustrated, but they lost in the SEC championship game, and they kind of did that to themselves. They lost the game. They lost the game. So they understood that was a possibility, and then it happened. Unfortunate for them, right? Whatever. But he did have his starting quarterback coming back. He had many of his starters on the offensive line coming back. He knew that he was going to be able to field a pretty good football team here, especially because they're loaded anyhow. But I always thought that he was going to play the game to get out, to get off the field. I mean, just to go home, meaning that I think he realized they could win this game running the football, really attacking Florida State's defense, especially because it was going to be thinner. We knew that. I mean, there had been rumors that Tatum Bethune and Kalen DeLoach weren't going to play much in this game, that they were going to play, but we didn't know how much. So now if we're starting to add all this up and your best defensive linemen are not playing and the depth chart is very thin, and then let's say some of the other starters at linebacker were only going to play 20 snaps or something of that ilk. If you're Kirby, just run the ball. You're going to win the game 38 to whatever we can put together on offense. I mean, you're going to win the game. You just want to go home at this point.
That's before the news came down. And for those of you that are just in, Braden Fisk and Josh Farmer are not playing for Florida State today. So the defensive interior is thinner. Darrell Jackson has run out of the tunnel in pads. He was running next to Patrick Payton. So those are two good football players that you will have up front. But this was one of the things that we talked about yesterday is like, okay, you see the guys that are on the top line of the two deep that Florida State released, and a lot of them are similar names in the front seven for defense and on the offensive line. But how long are they actually going to be out there? That's the thing. Like, Maurice Smith has been playing hurt for weeks. I don't know that the gap between the ACC championship game and today's exhibition is sufficient time for him to be fully healthy. And if that's the case, how long does he go? And if he has to come off the field, then Darius plays center, and now you're playing the game. And now you're playing the game of how the offensive line rotates. And that, to me, affects the way that you should call the game to protect your quarterback in Brock Glenn, because he's the only scholarship quarterback that you have coming off of the sidelines today. So how much are those guys going to play? And to your point, we rotate linebackers a bunch anyway, as it is. And Tatum Bethune, you watched him. He battled through being dinged up in the ACC championship game. This is his final chance to play. I just
got word Tatum Bethune is not playing in this game today.
Okay, well, there you go. So Kalen DeLoach then. Forget Bethune. Kalen DeLoach, how much is he going to play? He's talked about it's a point of pride. Is it the whole game? Is it 2 drives? Because now the interior of your defensive line is paper thin. You don't have one of your 2 starting linebackers, your primary reserve, left in the portal. So, yeah, man. You got some problems here.
There are problems you're not going to be able to overcome. Hey, I'm excited to still see some of these young kids on offense. I don't know what the status is in terms of health. Do you get a completely healthy Destin Hill? Do you get a completely healthy Hakeem Williams? Those are 2 players that I'm really excited to see play. We haven't talked about it. Morlock is playing today, I do believe, and he's a guy that is going to be a big part of what you do next year in the tight end room, and showed real glimpses this year of being a productive player. Again, I think Vendravius Jacobs could end up having a game today that would kind of affirm a lot of what we've talked about during the year when we've seen him in practice. He hasn't had that many opportunities in games, but he's real quick twitch. He's a lot of fun to watch when he has the ball in his hand. Brock Glenn himself is a kid that we have high hopes for. I'll have to watch this offensive line carefully to see if they can hold up. If they can, it'd be fun to watch him throw the ball around. I just don't know how Mike's going to approach this game. We have no way of predicting this. It's unlike any game we've ever covered, like any game we have ever had the privilege to do a pregame show for. I always love these things. I love these moments. I love having these conversations and vetting what we think is going to happen. But again, for people who are just hopping on, Florida State's going to play Georgia in about 20 minutes, and they don't have much of their starting lineup in this game. With the news today that Braden Fisk is now out, is not going to play in this game. Joshua Farmer is now out, not going to play in this game. Tatum Bethune, your do everything linebacker, is out today as well. It was already going to be a massive uphill climb to be able to compete in this game. But with further word today that even more players that you thought were going to start for Florida State have opted to not play for a variety of reasons. I don't know all of those, Tom. You speculated that it seems like Fisk was maybe dealing with an injury and was trying to give it a go all week long.
Play. I think he stood to make money today if he had another big performance against Georgia. So there are times when you're protecting your money, and then there are times when you could have taken a calculated risk to make a lot more. And I think it's the latter for Braden today.
Well, for whatever reason, he's not playing, and so you're stuck in a really an untenable set of circumstances for the coaching staff now. It's hard not to feel a lot of anger. You know, I can read in these chats and I can see on our boards, and I know people have had a hard time. Logically, they understand what happened, and they understand that some kids needed to opt out. Some kids were going to transfer. Some kids, have an NFL future at hand to work for, and we see it all over the country. You just saw last night, Ohio State scored 3 points without their best wide receiver, and of course, he opted out, and I understand why. He's going to be a top 5 pick. So there you go.
One thing to clarify. So Malcolm Ray is in uniform and going through warmups. I don't know what the situation is there, but I watched a video of Malcolm Ray going through warmups today. That would help the defensive interior, that's for sure, because it is paper thin. I think oddly enough, what we're finding out is that the defensive plan is in flux and is in trouble. The offense, which we had known about the upheaval for weeks now, you figured the moment that we didn't get into the playoff that Keon wasn't going to play. And Johnny announced weeks ago, your top 4 running backs from the ACC championship game, none of them are available today. Bless Harris, one of your starting tackles, when he was ever healthy, is not available today. But all of those things have been known. Jaheim Bell, Marquiston Douglas, they have been known for weeks. So I think the offensive plan, if you're just looking for continuity from before, let's say, Christmas to now, certainly it was what it needed to be because Tate Rodemaker decided to bail on Christmas Day. But everything else in terms of skill position players, it was consistent. Defensively, it looks like maybe there are some 11th hour changes here that make things all the more difficult for Florida State.
Yeah. You can't, with offense, Tom, you can call the game in such a way, and we've seen games, and they're incredibly frustrating to play against and to watch. We've seen teams come in outmatched against Florida State, for example, where a coach will bring his offense to town and realize, I can't block them. I can't block this defensive unit for Florida State. I can't keep my quarterback safe. So I'm going to run every version of this trick play that I have. It's going to be trickeration. We always joke about that year that Clemson came in here and just threw the kitchen sink trying to run all kinds of crazy plays years ago. And then, obviously that night Florida State won the game because Clemson couldn't get stops. But you can do things like that. You can come into a game where you're outmatched and say, all right, well, you know what? We're going to end up doing this, this, and this. But, boy, you can't hide your defense if you don't have personnel.
Correct.
You can't like trick your way into a result that is pleasing by pulling out everything under the sun on defense. You either can make a play at the line of scrimmage to slow down a running game, or you cannot.
Yeah, you need a blasé attitude from your opponent as the first precursor to have any prayer when you're outgunned in terms of personnel. But they're going to have some people available today. But again, I believe it's now up to 7 of the 11 starters from the ACC championship game that are unavailable today for Florida State on defense. Rotational players galore as well, not available for Florida State on defense. By Corey Clark's count, there's some alliteration for you. Florida State is essentially operating with an NFL-sized roster today. They're in the low 50s of scholarship players who are going to be available, not 85, but in the low 50s. And it's not like those 53, 54 players are going to be comprised of starters and all ACC left and right. No, this is a very, very different team than what you saw when we convened about 27 days ago for the ACC championship.
Well, we'll call it a day in about 4 minutes here. There's nothing more to break down. I see no need to continue to break this game down. I think we're all logical here. Cross your fingers. Football can be weird. Upsets happen. It is my sincere hope that Florida State is on the right side of one of those crazy moments. Let me look at a couple of starred comments and make sure that we get everybody who I ignored at the outset, not meaning to, but I wanted to answer some questions. Seth writes, I bet 110 to cover and 100 to win, so probably overconfident. Seth, you're in trouble. Michael writes, do you think Brock is more comfortable today with his receivers since it is who he has been throwing to all year long in practice, second and third stringers? Does he have better chemistry? That's a really good question, Michael, and I know why you would ask it. The problem for Brock Glenn was that he missed 6 weeks this year to a broken hand,
right,
or thumb, whatever it was, but it broke something on his hand in the first game he ever played, his thumb. And so he really didn't get the reps. And this is also why they were a little hesitant going into the ACC championship game. The thought was, and the hope was, that Tate would be able to give it a go and he would pass the concussion protocol and those tests. And they thought he would. All week long, they thought it was going to be Tate's game. And then as they got closer and closer to kickoff against Louisville, they realized there was a distinct possibility it was not going to be Tate's game. They weren't sure he was going to pass the concussion protocol tests. And so then Brock was given a very minimal game plan. I think you marry that with the fact that Mike saw early Louisville couldn't block Florida State. So once he realized Louisville can't block us, they can't score. And if they can't score, I'm not going to let my freshman quarterback making his first ever start cost us the game. So we're going to play very conservative. I'll run some wildcat. We'll try to win field position, get out of here with a win, get Tate back for the college football playoff. Best laid plans, right? They did win the game. It was the smart way and the patient way to go about winning that game, but it didn't do much to help Brock's growth. Now, Brock has known this is going to be his game. That does help him, but he does not have the benefit of 6, 7, 8 weeks of throwing to these guys in practice because he wasn't throwing to these guys in practice. Next one, Justin writes, we're on to Cincinnati. Can't help but wonder if we are shooting ourselves in the foot by waiting for Cam when we have a kid that seemingly wants to be here in DJ. Your thoughts? Great year, Warchant. Thanks, Justin, and thanks for your contribution. We appreciate you, just like I appreciate you, Seth and Michael. I don't think Florida State, this is my opinion, I don't think Florida State wants DJ as their quarterback. I don't believe that they are excited about him being the quarterback at Florida State. I think they'll hold out for what in their mind is something better. Whether Cam Ward comes or not is still up in the air. Some people think he's going to Miami. Some people think he'll declare for the NFL. Some people think he's looking elsewhere. I know that he's seriously considering Florida State as well, but we don't know the answer just yet. But this is not a case where Florida State is being held hostage right now. They're not waiting on Cam Ward with the thought that if we don't get him, we'll go grab DJ. I don't think that is their philosophy here. I think it's we'd like Cam Ward. If he wants to come here, we'll certainly take him because he'd be a nice bridge for this next year. But if he doesn't, we're not immediately pivoting to DJ, in my opinion. That's just the sense I get. I talk to sources. I talk to a lot of people over there. I don't think they're in love with him. That's the feeling I get. So they may wait for other people. And I can tell you this, if you want more insight to how crazy college football is right now, there is a guy who played in a bowl game within the last 48 hours, who's a quarterback, who was talking to Florida State about transferring here before their game. I mean, it's...
Oh, please tell me it was Ohio State's quarterback or Drew Aller. One of those two, please.
The point would be it's a crazy time. Like that. This is just because you don't get a guy right yet doesn't mean a week from now or 3 days from now there's not another big name that enters out there that you have a chance to bring in. Florida man in Texas, always appreciate you. The real question is, does Jeff have his Zaxby's platters from one of the 137 Zaxby's in Tallahassee? And did he send any to Tom? I did not send any to Tom. Tom brought several platters with him to New York. They have them in the fridge. They're good to go. Plus, we're on a first-name basis with the owners of Zaxby's. We can get it flown in anywhere we need to be for our parties.
Danny has it like that. Danny at Zaxby's does live like that, so we could make that happen.
We could do it, but I appreciate it, and we appreciate Zaxby's. Chris, what do you guys think the reason is not nearly as many Georgia players opted out for this game? They, too, did not suffer anything close to the devastation that Florida State did, being the first ever undefeated Power 5 conference champion being left out of a playoff. Also, I do think frankly, they have a lot of opt-outs. We're going to see here. Now, we don't know what that total is. Kirby Smart's done a good job of really not openly talking about that this week. And he's done a very good job of just kind of deflecting those questions. We'll see how many of Georgia's starters truly play in this game. There's a good chance that there are double-digit guys that don't.
Yeah, and for Florida State, the number's 13. I think it's settled at 13 of 22 starters are not playing in this game. But some of the unique circumstances for Florida State, unique, meaning different from Georgia, is they had a lot of guys come back or they were in one-and-done type situations where the next ticket is the NFL.
Yeah.
If this team had amassed 13 wins on the backs of a lot of sophomores, who were really good players or redshirt freshmen, they'd be playing today. But we were in a scenario with a ton of these guys where the next game that they're going to play that wasn't for a national championship or college football invitational was going to be on Sundays. And I think that's the scenario here. There are some dudes where that's not the case, but most of them that is 100% the truth.
And I will also say, Tom, and I believe this is a part of it too, and there's a risk-reward aspect to all of this. This is also what can happen when a lot of the people you depend on are transfer portal players.
Mm-hmm.
They're not guys that were recruited out of high school, that came into the system, ingrained in the culture, waited their turn, were here for 3 years before they ever got on the field. And that's not who these kids were. And let's just say it can solve your problems and you can win a lot of games. And we have 23 of them in the last 2 years, right? I mean, that's a hell of a run that Florida State's on. But it is also true to say that is not the same as a homegrown culture built up through the high school ranks.
I agree with you 100%. But I think that Jared Verse was of the culture of this program, and Trey Benson.
No, we had kids buy in. I agree.
Yeah.
And you can go one by one with this, Tom, and it would be the smart thing to do because we can't paint with a broad brush here. Jared Verse was of this culture. He was a big part of the reason the culture was healthy. He's also going to be a top 15 pick.
Yes.
There's zero reason for him to play in this game. And so you got a player like that, or a Keon Coleman who was here for 1 year. I think he likes Florida State. He loved his brothers. He worked hard. He produced for us. Is he true blue Nole? Come on. What are we talking about here? And he too is a first-round draft pick. So I just think you keep going down the list. It's a different deal for everybody. But I think it is a perfect storm. And unfortunately for us, it adds up to a whole lot of people missing a game that a lot of people will be tuning into in about 10 minutes. And it doesn't appear that Florida State's going to be able to be competitive.
I do want to say from our thread on warchant.com, which is the place you're going to want to be, because if you think the roster is different now, we'll just wait like 72 hours. It's going to be even more different. But Maurice Smith was taking Rush's pregame. He's going to be your starting center. And I know I harp on this kid specifically a lot. He's playing through a ton. Like if you're angry at everybody who's not playing, well, then you need to hold that kid on high because he's starting at center for Florida State today, and he's playing through it, man. I don't know that a month off could help what he's been battling through. But that starting offensive line is anchored in the middle by Maurice. It's Darius Washington, Casey Roddick, Demetri Emanuel, Jeremiah Byers, left to right. We'll see how much they play, but hats off to those guys, and then hats off to the other 50 or so players that are going to play their hearts out today, because this is a tall ass task in front of them.
Well, it sucks. It's an awful situation, and it's enough to make you very, very angry across the board. You're angry already at the committee. You're angry that slight occurred. You're angry at the fallout from that. You're angry at a few of the players who misplayed their hand. I mean, I could tell you about a running back who would like to be back, but screwed it all up and had bad advice from people in his corner. He made poor decisions, and now he's not available to play today. He's not on the team anymore, and it's a bad look. You're going to see some guys that got bad advice or thought they were worth more than they were, who are going to go elsewhere. And you can't be held hostage by players. I mean, look, if DJ Lundy wants to go play wherever it's Colorado, good luck with that, man. That program is in complete disarray. I hope you have fun. And by the way, they're not paying as much as the Battles Inn was paying here. Have fun with that. You can go on and on with a lot of these guys, but this is the part of the transition that college football is in right now, where you got to make hard decisions. And kids aren't always going to like what they hear, and they're going to get fed bad advice. And the repercussions of that is that you might lose some of those kids. But you can't be held hostage and decide to overspend for a kid who's not even very good. I mean, the linebacker I just referenced isn't that great a player. So I'm not overpaying that. And this is just kind of where you're at. And it's a deep breath moment. Stay off of social media, kids.
Yeah, these conversations were supposed to happen a week from now and 2 weeks from now. But the problem among many with the committee's decision is it sped it all up and compressed it. So this has just been a bumpy ass month that was supposed to be about celebratory practices out in Pasadena or in New Orleans. Instead, these kids are making decisions in that moment while the staff is like there are 8 tasks and they got 2 hands and 2 arms. They don't know everything that happens blow by blow here in Tallahassee because they've got to go recruit in Cali. They got to go recruit in Alabama and South Florida. It's been a bumpy ass ride. So if they all look a little tired on the sidelines today, cut them a break. It's been one hell of a ride for Mike and the staff.
Yeah, keep your head up, play hard, and hope like hell the game is competitive into the second half. I'll be rooting the boys on no matter what. Of course, we're all Noles here. I doff the cap to this great team that was so much fun to cover and a joy to watch play this year. I do want to end the pregame show by noting that this team went 13-0, won the ACC, deserved a better fate. They weren't given that opportunity. It's unfortunate. The fallout since is self-evident, but that should not cloud your vision as to what kind of team this team was. All class, all heart, hardworking, all those things will remain true. We'll see what the version of Florida State football looks like next year. A lot going on from the end of this game on into the offseason. And before you know it, Tom, you'll be flying back down here, and you and I will be covering spring football. And we'll be talking about a lot of new players as well as some emerging players that are already on this depth chart. And we'll be excited once again about Florida State football. Hopefully we'll have some answers as to what's happening, both with the lawsuit, but then also college football regulations on transfers and all of that sort of thing. Maybe we have better clarity as we move forward. Because right now, this bowl season has been an ugly look for college football across the board. And this will seem to be at the apex of that ugly look, this game right here.
You dipping into the brown water today?
Perhaps.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, buddy, this is you and me talking with a lot of people watching, but you got to do a post game for this?
I do. Mm-hmm.
You're a strong man.
It'll be right here on Warchant. Oh, come on. I did the Jacksonville State game. I did the live reaction.
We weren't good when that happened. We were awful when that happened. That was just one in the long line of many sorry performances. This is different. This team's undefeated. This team deserved better.
This camera was rolling when the committee did what they did. I've been through it all, man. This is nothing. Yeah. What? I'm Lieutenant Dan. What you got for me? Is that it? Is that all you got?
Bring it on.
You've taken my limbs. You've taken my heart. Is that all you got? I'm still here.
Well, it's nice and chilly here in Tallahassee. The scotch may have to get pulled out tonight. All right, brother. It's been great all year long, always. You know I love you, and I'll be talking with you again soon. I'll probably tune into the post game just out of amusement to see.
Well, if and when you do, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. It's absolutely free.
Oh, man. Good stuff. For Tom Lang, I'm Jeff Cameron. Thanks to all of you. We greatly appreciate it. Ben, thank you for producing. Did a great job as always. We love you. Go Noles. Deep breaths. Hang in there. Don't let this game in any way cloud your vision as to the kind of season it really was. So be good. Until next time. Peace.